My name is Jill Coyle, and welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, where we talk the nitty-gritty aspects of divorce and help each other come through this not only surviving, but thriving. I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm interviewing other experts and people just like you who are going through or have been through a divorce, so you can have the latest and greatest information on all things before, during, and after divorce. Let's dive in. Ready? Oh my gosh, we're so excited for this episode of No One Dies from Divorce because we are having another celebrity podcast and we are talking about Angelina Jolie versus Brad Pitt. And Corttany Brooks, my attorney that works with me. She's been here on the show before. She is back to talk all about this salacious and interesting divorce going on.
Yes, the 6-year divorce that just keeps coming, except there's no new information right now. So we're going to dive into all of that.
I know. That was the only thing that I didn't like after doing research about this couple, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. There's, first of all, no finality, so we can't even really talk about what happened at the end, even though they talked about it clear back in when or they divorced, started this process so long ago, and it's been making the news, but man, we just can't get, we just don't know what's going on now.
Oh yeah, so we're going to run through this. Divorce was filed in September of 2016. It is January of 2022. And
it's not done. It's not done. It's crazy. And this divorce is just interesting because it rings true to a lot of divorces that Corttany and I see, and it's just got a lot of things. And of course, we're just limited to whatever information we can get. And, they make these celebrity divorces private, so we're really just left to whatever TMZ is reporting. So we can take it as that and have as much fun with it as we can, but you got to take it as that.
Yes.
Salacious news. That makes a lot of money from it.
Oh yeah.
So as you guys know, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt have been together actually for a while. I actually didn't look up this stat of when they got together.
I did. It was 2005 is when he divorced Jennifer Aniston, and I think it was believed that she is the reason why they got a divorce.
I don't think it's believed. I think that's an actual fact. Okay. He cheated on Jennifer Aniston with Angelina Jolie when he was taping the movie with her.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So they started taping that. They get a divorce, and they've been together ever since.
Yeah.
2005.
Yeah, and they were together forever, and then when did they get married?
Oh,
it was 3 years before 2016, so it would have been 2013. And their whole thing is that they were never going to get married until everyone could get married. And so then when everybody could get married, the news was that their kids were like, well, now you have to get married.
And they waited, I think I looked, it was 2014 approximately. So they waited, what would that have been? 2 years and 2 months approximately, hired a private judge and got married. Which is actually the same private judge over their divorce.
Oh, which is where we're going to run into a little bit of problem, or what Angelina tried to make a problem. So if you remember, they technically have 6 kids together. I think 2 of them are natural. They're actual biological, and then 4 of them are adopted. And a couple of them were adopted by Angelina before Brad Pitt came into the picture.
He did assume he adopted those children as well in their marriage.
So he is technically their legal father of all 6 children, even though he's not the biological father. And it's kind of funny because I remember back in the news when I found out that they were getting married, I thought, oh, well, now it's just the beginning of the end. Did you think that?
Like they were happily together for almost 10 years, but now we're going to get married.
Yeah. Because that's just kind of been I think the pattern of Hollywood. Like, you can be together for years, and as soon as you pull that trigger on marriage, it's like the ticking time bomb until it ends.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have two people like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, who clearly are going to have grandiose personalities and like believe that, they walk on water kind of thing. It was just an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And the lives that they lead, I can't imagine. I mean, how much time do they spend together? How much time do they spend together as a family, married, constantly out filming, doing whatever they may be doing? It's just ripe for disaster.
Right. And they were another family that really wanted to try to raise their kids out of the United States, kind of like Johnny Depp and his wife or his partner. Which is it's just an interesting dynamic, especially when they're both Hollywood actors doing majority of their work in LA. And I remember part of their kind of compromise was that they were never going to do a movie at the same time. But if you look at the last 5-6 years of work for Angelina and Brad Pitt, I mean, Brad Pitt's just been in movie after movie after movie.
There's no way there hasn't been overlap. I mean, she's released at least 3 or 4 movies. He's released at least 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly feel like Brad Pitt's have some of the best movies of his career in the last 5-6 years. Whereas I couldn't even probably tell you what Angelina's been in, which is, just telling. So an interesting fact, they filed divorce on September 19, 2016, and she cited irreconcilable differences. And she did request sole physical custody of their 6 children. But Corttany, explain to our viewers what irreconcilable differences mean.
So that's just essentially your way of saying that the marriage has broken down and there's no way to fix it. We don't have fault divorces anymore here in the United States. You don't have to apportion fault. You don't have to prove that one person or the other did something to warrant this divorce. You're allowed to say, look, it's just not working anymore.
Right.
And I would say 99% of the divorces filed are for irreconcilable differences.
Right.
I actually haven't filed one not for irreconcilable differences yet, but you may have.
Well, there's only like 6, I think it's 6 states that actually consider themselves a fault state, where you can actually use fault as the reason for the divorce. Utah is kind of a mistake because people think it's a fault state, but we're technically considered a non-fault state. But then we have this weird caveat where we're able to use fault in a divorce. So it's confusing. I get it. But for the most part, in Utah, you are going to get a divorce based off of irreconcilable differences. So she didn't allege abuse. She didn't allege, any harmful act. She didn't allege fault. And this was filed in California, which is a no-fault state. So I'm not surprised that they did irreconcilable differences. So she hires a big-time attorney, Robert Offer. And they released a headline on September 20th, 2016, that just said that her decision for the divorce was for the health of the family. But that didn't answer, they didn't follow up with any further questions. So, that's an interesting statement, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's a cookie cutter statement that you make. But
the health of the family.
Got right into it.
Right. Because, of course, they're going to. I think it shocked everybody, which is funny because how does this shock people anymore? It is just what it is, just expected. And
well, it's just a celebrity divorce at the end of the day.
What I want, though, is them to stop making it private. If you're going to be an actor and you're going to make as much money as you make, and you're going to be able to live that life by making movies, I want your divorce to be public so I know every salacious detail about you. Is that so much to ask, Corttany?
I don't know. Even our divorces aren't public.
No, well, kind of. Our orders are public.
That's true. You can get access to an order or a decree of divorce. So if it weren't private, we could have, once they're divorced, we could have gotten access to the document that says everything and what everyone got.
Right.
But here we're never going to see that document.
And to seal a divorce in Utah, it's quite a process. I've done it a few times for some of our more high prestigious clients, and it's a process. And it doesn't happen. So then Brad released a statement, and he claims, I'm very saddened by this, but what matters most now is the well-being of our kids. I kindly ask the press to give them the space they deserve during the challenged time. So So then, a little bit of the divorce surfaced. And so you can talk a little bit about that.
Yep. So, well, the tabloids started getting into it. So Us Weekly, there's a source that came out and said, there was some fighting going on. There was a lot of disagreements about co-parenting. Then they released a statement to E! News saying that Angelina is going to always do what's in the best interest of taking care of her family. She appreciates everyone understanding and their need for privacy at this time. So they're asking for privacy. Other celebrities start reacting.
What's funny too is they say that their, it started coming out that their marriage was wrought with, emotions and anger. And I just keep going back to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where they're like beating the crap out of each other. And then they'd like passionately embrace and kiss. And I was like, that's how their marriage had to be, right?
That's how their relationship started. That's what started
it
for them.
They pull a gun from under the table and like point it at each other and be like, oh, I love you so much. That's how I'm imagining this. Oh my gosh. So then, these stars, it was interesting because George Clooney is really good friends with Brad Pitt, clearly from the Oceans movies. He found out about the breakup while attending the Leader Summit on Refugees at the United Nations. How awkward is that, right? You're trying to like do service and then you find out. And it's interesting because the interview was with CNN and a reporter asked him to comment on their split, to which he shockingly responded, "Wait, what happened? I didn't know that. I feel very sorry then. That's a sad story and unfortunate for a family. It's an unfortunate story about a family. I feel very sorry to hear that." And then Adele also dedicated her New York concert to the couple, telling the audience, "I need to address the elephant in the room, but it's the end of an era." Talking about Brad and Angelina. Brangelina is what we should call it. And then Courtney Cox said that the divorce is not about Jennifer Aniston, and Jen's husband at the time, Justin Theroux, made a similar comment about her inclusion being nonsense. It was Melissa Etheridge's comment that I thought was kind of interesting, where she said she called Angelina nasty and saying that the allegations of child abuse against Brad were completely unfounded. So go ahead and go into that.
Well, yeah. And so at that point, we didn't know there were allegations of child abuse.
Right.
There was an investigation that had been started. And I just want to go into this a little bit. And so, other celebrities were having their reactions. We get these celebrities talking about child abuse, but we don't actually know that there's any investigation until September 22nd. So 6 days later, we actually find out as the public that through People magazine that Brad Pitt is under investigation for child abuse. The report is initially incorrect. It says that he's under investigation by the LA police and the Department of Child and Family Services for LA. What we subsequently learn is that there was an incident that occurred on the family's private plane on September 14, 2016.
Which is just, by the way, 2 days prior to her filing for divorce. So this kind of goes into play now with what she meant when she says she's doing this for the health and safety of her family. There was obviously an incident 2 days prior that made her mad.
Absolutely. And so not long after people break this new, LAPD come out and say, look, we have no criminal investigation that we are actively pursuing right now. Subsequently, this makes sense. They were on their plane. They were flying, so it's federal jurisdiction.
Which is crazy. So you hear a lot about the FBI doing this investigation, and me and Courtney are like, that's weird. Like, usually the FBI isn't going to get into, like, child abuse claims, but in this case, they were the only ones that had jurisdiction because they were in the air. Crazy. And that was big, I think, to know, because those allegations of this one incident that happened, allegedly happened on, has carried through basically what I would say a nightmare for Brad Pitt.
6 years into the divorce.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, this has been the only specific incident of abuse that's been alleged.
Yeah.
Obviously, court documents are sealed. Obviously, we don't know exactly what's been said behind closed doors, but from what we have access to, this is the allegation, this incident that occurred 2 days before Angelina filed for divorce.
And she's made comments like, oh, he's been physically abusive. And this comes out later. But it started with this one specific instance. And then it kind of snowballed into, well, he's always been kind of abusive. And it's frustrating because when you have allegations of child abuse at the very beginning, what it does is it puts somebody on a different level of being able to then prove best interest for purposes of custody. And that's exactly what Angelina did here. She used this allegation as ability to get custody of her kids, which now Brad Pitt has had to fight years and probably millions of dollars to get up to what he is. And we're going to talk about that. And sometimes that stinks because, of course, you want to take child abuse seriously. Of course, you want to take domestic violence seriously. But then at the end of the day, when it gives somebody an upper hand on being able to get more time with their kids and the allegations come out to be false, what's the recourse for that person that lost all that time? And I don't know the answer to that.
I really don't think there is any. I mean, we do this every day, and unfortunately, there's abuse allegations in many of my divorce cases.
Yeah.
And we've got to dive in and we've got to figure out when it's happening and when someone's being strategic. And unfortunately, that's just a sad reality of our job.
Yeah. And so Brad finally got a lawyer on September 22nd, Lance Spiegel, who's another prominent family law attorney in Beverly Hills. And so he's going to then be able to kind of figure out what they need to do. So then, Brad obviously is having these allegations. And so then, he starts backing out of events because, of course, he doesn't, want. He's turning his attention basically on his family and what he needs to do to see his kids. I thought it was interesting. So she accuses him of physical abuse and then also like being drunk.
Yes.
And smoking weed.
Yes, she accused him of being drunk and smoking weed.
Yeah. So I tell this to all my clients. If you're being accused of drug use, inappropriate, illegal substances, best thing to do is just submit to a drug test.
Absolutely. And if you're being accused of being an alcoholic, then get a breathalyzer. Blow into it 3 times a day.
Yeah. And what's I think proper and what Brad should have done is what he did is he was like, sure, I'll take a drug test. And he even said, I have nothing to hide. Even DCFS confirmed that they weren't going to compel him to take a drug test. It would have to be voluntary at this time because there wasn't any really allegations that because of any illegal substance. And I think is it legal now to smoke marijuana in California? Of course, at the time, it probably wasn't.
It probably was still illegal. It's 2016. I don't think that it was legal to be smoking marijuana. Yeah. And it's never going to be legal to be smoking marijuana on a plane.
Yes. And it's also not going to be legal. Well, it's not going to be encouraged to be smoking pot with your kids.
No, we're never going to be there.
Yeah, you're never going to be there. So I thought this was interesting. So then Angelina is like, hey, my lawyer's not enough. I'm now going to hire this real life Olivia Pope for her divorce. And this is a famous crisis manager, Judy Smith, who inspired Kerry Washington's character in Scandal. Do you watch that show?
I had no idea there was a real person.
I didn't know either. It's so interesting. It reminds me of how, the movie with Kylo Ren and Scarlett Johansson. What's the movie about
Marriage Story?
Yes, Marriage Story. And that divorce attorney, it was actually based off of a real life and divorce attorney. And so I was shocked by that. But then now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Well, it just makes sense that someone like this, of course, someone like this exists.
Mm-hmm. And I guess her and her firm have a long history of handling issues that have unfortunately garnered too much attention to the public eye, and she knows how to push towards resolutions that are swift and discreet. So I guess I want to applaud her on saying maybe that she pushed this forward being discreet because, like we said, we couldn't find a lot of information on the good old internet. But swiftly, I would not say that happened.
Swiftly has not occurred. And they did reach a temporary custody agreement rather quickly. So that part, swiftly, sure. But actually getting them divorced, getting this wrapped up, has not been swift at all. And so we know that on September 30th, we're still within 2 weeks of the original filing. They reached a temporary custody agreement, which would be in effect for 3 weeks. While the Department of Children and Family Services work on turning up another agreement and turning jurisdiction over to the court. This agreement gave Angelina full physical custody of their kids and Brad visitation rights. However, his first visitation had to be monitored by a therapist. And then that therapist gets to determine when he'll be allowed to have unsupervised parent time with his children. So, I mean, these are pretty heavy restrictions that have been placed on him in this temporary agreement.
Yeah. And again, that goes to our play where it's pretty common when there's been allegations of abuse for you to try to come into temporary agreements to try to prove that the allegations are false. So one of the things is like a lot of people like just want to deny it. They want to fight it and they want to get right back in to parent time. But you also have to remember you have a kid who thinks that maybe you hurt them or has a story that they've created in their head. And so rushing back into parent time unsupervised or not in a safe space can actually put you in a position to hurt you further with more false allegations coming back. So I actually think what Brad did was very, very smart.
I agree. I absolutely agree with when you have any type of allegation out there, whether or not it's been substantiated or unsubstantiated once it's investigated, your child has said something to someone. And you should have a therapist or another professional present to make sure that that first visit doesn't lead to some rejection or some trauma that's going to follow you in your relationship with your kids.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, Angelina kept the kids from Brad this entire time. So he knew that he either needed to probably go to court, which could take months to get into court and not see his kids, or make some kind of agreement like this to allow him to be reintroduced. So I think his attorney was very smart in this plan. So then on October 8th, so just merely, less than a month after the initial report came out, the FBI said, hey, they opened an investigation against Brad because it was reported that the FBI never opened an investigation against Brad because there was no case. And I guess TMZ reported that the FBI was still gathering all facts from the incident, but at least at this time we knew that there wasn't a case open.
Yep. So at this time, that's really all anyone knew, what the media was reporting. We knew that the Department of Child and Family Services was doing an investigation. Mm-hmm. We knew that LA police had said they're not doing an investigation, and we're getting wishy-washy information from the tabloids saying maybe the FBI is investigating, maybe they aren't.
Right. And as we know, the TMZ takes a tiny bit of information and runs with it. Like, they do just enough to not be charged with libel or defamation. But
we could do a whole nother podcast.
If you want to talk about journalism or like finding the truth, it's not going to come through TMZ. But for some reason, they always have the first scoop.
They're very good at the first scoop.
Yeah,
got to give them that.
They've got eyes and ears everywhere, and they make enough money that they can pay people for those first scoops. So then Brad finally gets to see his kids for the first time on October 8th. And this was with a therapist to be present, which, again, I think was a smart move because it gives the kids a sense of security. Whatever Angelina's told the kids, it's able to be monitored. It protects Brad from the kids saying he did something or said something. So again, I think that was probably a pretty smart move for him.
Yes, and also he's still voluntarily doing drug and alcohol testing, which is absolutely recommended when there's been allegations like this.
Yeah. So the child that allegedly he abused on the plane is Maddox, which is the oldest child, which that child's now graduated. So he was 16.
I believe he's 20 now.
Yeah, so he was like 16 when this alleged incident happened. And he didn't want to go to the visit, which, again, that's pretty common for an older kid. And a lot of times the courts are just going to say, you know what, it's an older kid. We're going to support them in their decision.
Oh, absolutely. Depending on their age, their maturity, the fact that he's also a male, and it's his father, they're bound to have some type of conflict there that the courts sometimes are just going to they're going to let ride. It's a teenager, and they're going to say, you know what, parents, just kind of figure it out.
Yeah, and so then we find out that the FBI is interviewing the children, interviewing a mom, that and so I guess it's still an allegation out there, and it's still being investigated, which these allegations never get resolved quickly.
No. I think they say, we try to do DCFS 30 days. I don't tell any clients to expect 30 days, though.
Yeah. And I love this because it was only about not even a month, and Brad and Maddox finally reunite. So I guess I got to give it to Angelina, because me and Corttany see people that are so resistant to reunification therapy, and they're just putting up a wall. They're called gatekeepers, alienators. We see this. And I guess the good thing is that they got an agreement, and Angelina was actually upholding it. Like, she was actually doing it, taking the kids to therapy and allowing it to happen the way it needed to happen. I think that's giving Angelina a little bit of credit.
Absolutely, because we see too many times where people come to these temporary agreements and then they don't abide by them.
Yeah. So then we see that they're starting to sell off their property, their Chateau Miraval. They started, listing it for sale. And so this is just all happening like within the span of about a month. Angelina meets with the FBI, which happens, I guess, on October 18th. So then we find out on the investigation into Brad is extended, which again is normal because they want to make sure they interview all the other people, and they want to make sure that their investigation is complete before they make a finding, because if you don't have a full investigation and you make a finding, you could get in a lot of trouble. So that's what they were doing here. And it was initially to conclude on October 20th, but it got extended a little bit. So, yeah, go for it.
Oh, no. So next thing, we finally get access to some court documents. Mm-hmm. So Angelina has filed her petition for divorce. Brad has to respond. He has to respond and say what he's asking for. So we find out on November 4th, 2016, that Brad is seeking joint custody in the divorce. Angelina, as we said, was asked for sole custody, allowing Brad visitation rights. And the temporary agreement was the same, but he filed his actual answer to her divorce petition essentially and said, look, I'm going to seek joint custody in all of this.
Yeah. And Brad's denied the allegations all along, denied what she's claimed he is, which goes to another, back to the Johnny Depp whole, like, when do we believe you to not believe you, to, support you to not support you? It's a really tough situation. I think Brad dealt with it beautifully here. But it's still hard and sad to see what he had to go through to get there finally.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for me, at least, I see all these celebrity divorces just, just all over the media. We don't know. Yeah. I don't think we're ever really going to know, but I do appreciate that I don't remember at least seeing him in the media bad-mouthing Angelina, saying anything negative. They both kind of really tried to keep it under wraps, which
kudos to both of them.
Yeah. For the kids, for them, for their family, they weren't out in the media bad-mouthing each other. Yeah. Now, later they were.
Yeah.
Things took a little turn nasty later. But here at the beginning, they were just moving forward. Things were being investigated. They came to another temporary agreement, because that first one was only going to last a few weeks. And so they came to another temporary agreement. It was similar that Angelina still has sole custody. Kids are still having therapeutic visits with Brad. And there was a statement that said this has been determined to be by child care professionals in the best interest of the children.
Yeah. And so they're clearly trying to still work together to do what's in the best interest, even though Brad denies the allegations, and I'm sure it's just tearing him up inside. Again, I think his attorney was smart how he dealt with this. The other benefit of doing small temporary agreements as well is that they expire. So something else needs to happen. And then if they expire and you can't get another agreement, you can just say there's no agreement, we're going to court. So I thought that was very smart as well, because just saying an ongoing temporary agreement could have hurt Brad in the fact that she would have never done anything to negotiate more time for him, or to work that up without her having to. So I felt like that was another smart thing on his part.
Absolutely. I agree. And so the next thing we find out is that he gets cleared of the child abuse allegation.
On both levels,
Yes.
both on the FBI level and on DCFS level, which is usually a lower standard. FBI is going to be, criminal. DCFS is clear and convincing. So, so they both found that there was no abuse, and they denied to press charges, or DCFS, unsubstantiated the claim.
Yep, which means neither entity is going to move forward with anything, and it's really just going to have to be figured out in the divorce court at this point.
Right. So on December 22nd, 2016, Brad's lawyer then files a motion asking the judge to seal the children's records as it relates to the divorce. They were alleging that Angelina's attorneys compromised their privacy in a bid to undercut Brad during the custody battle. And they added that Angelina's releasing the names of the children's therapists and other mental health professionals violated their initial agreement and protect the children's privacy. She appears to be determined to ignore even agreed upon standards relating to the children's best interest, the filing read. What do you think about that?
I think especially now that I've been a part of this family law community in Utah, where there's a big focus on AFCC and AFCC guidelines, which is, conciliation of court-involved therapists, and it provides guidelines for basically court-involved therapists and what they should be doing. I absolutely agree that these individuals' information should be kept private, especially in a divorce case like this.
Yeah. And if she's using the children as weapons to try to get leverage or to get media attention to help her get custody of the kids, it just needs to stop. And famous people have the ability to do that because they can make anonymous statements to whoever and get things out there and get, rumors swirling. And so I think that it was absolutely probably important that this happened. What I was surprised with is how Angelina basically claimed, oh, Brad, this is you trying to hide what you've done to the kids. I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense.
I agree. But this is what you see, right? The entities have come in. They've done an investigation. One side is unhappy with the investigation. So this person with this prolific power and following says, fine, if I can't beat you in the courts, I'm going to beat you in the courts of public opinion. And I absolutely think they released that information to undercut their court battle. We see it on a small scale on our cases, but this is just it playing out on that larger scale. And I don't really buy that you're terrified that the public will learn the truth, because as divorce attorneys, protecting the privacy of children and the sanctity of their mental health professionals is paramount to us as practitioners.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting because the document that her attorney filed said, there is little doubt that Brad would prefer to keep the entire case private, particularly given the detailed investigations by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Children and Family Services into allegation of abuse. What I thought was funny is he asked to seal after the results came out that he was not, they found no allegations or substance to the allegations of abuse. So it was already out there. Oh, for her to use that as a reason for him wanting to sell, I thought was nonsensical. I'm like, that makes no sense. Because now that he's been found, I guess, not guilty, that would be more reason for him to be like, yeah, I don't want to sell this. But no, he is literally saying, no, going forward, we need to sell this to attempt to protect the children. I mean, I felt like it was way more sincere on Brad's part from what I gathered than from Angelina's.
Well, and at least the filings themselves, they're talking about their mental health professionals, keeping those names private, keeping that part of it private. So I tend to agree with you. I think that there was a little bit of, I'm going to get my people and my followers on my side since I'm upset about the way these findings have come down.
And it almost is like a Britney Spears moment where they want to know where the kids go to therapy so they can take a picture of the kid coming out crying.
Oh, that's what.
And then make their assessment that, oh, see, they're so sad that they have to go see their dad. I just felt like that was a little crazy. And the kids are under 18. And I've said this before, therapy should never be used as a weapon. Should be used as a safe space for those children to be able to learn to cope and deal with the emotions that they're having from the initial shock of the divorce. And their therapist should never be put in the middle to become a weapon in a custody battle. It's just not their job. So interesting, they file these competing, pleadings, but then they eventually just agreed to seal it because I think maybe Angelina probably got a backlash storm of people thinking, and so she just finally agreed that, okay, we'll seal it.
Yep, I think they agreed to seal it, and then they release a joint statement. They say, we've signed an agreement. We're going to preserve the privacy rights of the children, and we're going to act as, a united front to effectuate recovery and reunification. And that's really, I feel like, all we hear about the divorce side of things for a little while. It really from there just goes into they're talking to new people. Other tabloids are reacting. And I'll let you get into a little bit of that. They talk about Brad and Angelina's relationship a little bit, how it moves along. But we don't get much information about the court side of things for a while.
Yeah, because they sealed the records and things kind of go quiet on that side. So when, we don't get to hear about that, we don't know really what's going on. But this is early 2017, and this is what we do know. They're still not finalized. They're still not finalized. And so I want to get to this because from here on out now, Brad goes fiercely in fighting for custody, of getting custody back of his children. Remember, he's only seeing his kids supervised through a therapist. From here on out, he's like, I want parent time. I want my kids back. And there was a couple of salacious things that happened in the meantime. Like Brad reached out to Jennifer Aniston, who has always been angry with him and mad because he's a homewrecker. I guess they end up texting and
at some point, Brad and Angelina are texting.
Yeah.
And, again, all just things that play out in the media. We don't really know what's happening on the inside of things, just what's being reported about some of these salacious things that, clickbait.
Right. And Brad opens up in a GQ article actually about, that he's been going to therapy and he's speaking out about his drinking. He got really honest about his family being ripped apart and that it was really, really hard. I know we read things about how he lost a ton of weight, like he went through the process just like any human being that goes through this process. And it was hard for him. I couldn't imagine too, Brad came in as a bachelor, probably never in his wild dream thought he was going to have kids, kind of like a Brad or a George Clooney ideal. And then all of a sudden married Angelina and, becomes the father of 6.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, when she came into it, I believe she'd already had at least 1 or 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
I can't when they got together. And so she was a mother. She was there. Like you said, he was a bachelor. And, at the same time, she gave a few interviews where she talked about, how hard it was. She was also suffering from health conditions at the time, talking about, this has been really hard on all of us.
Yeah.
So they're both releasing statements. He's releasing statements about things he's doing to get better. I know that she's releasing statements related to her health and well-being.
Right. And, it's always good to hear when the people are talking together again. I mean, they have 6 kids together. You always hope the goal is that they can get back to where they can talk and have kind of a mutual respect for each other. And in this case, they actually decided to put their divorce on hold. This was 2017, later 2017. which I thought was interesting. But then when you have 6 kids and your youngest being, fairly young, and your old, they had 6 kids from 16 down to 17 now, down to their youngest twins were probably 4 or 5. It also puts a lot of things in perspective. So I can't fault them or think, that them trying to put it on hold and maybe work on each other is a good idea.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes space, too. I mean, if they're not living in that home together anymore and they're both getting that space that they need, that's absolutely a place to make it ripe. For some people, it's ripe for reconciliation. For a lot of people, it's really just ripe for good negotiating and resolving their divorce case.
Yeah.
For them, they decided to put it on hold.
What's interesting about this, so they put things on hold. And then the next piece of information we have is the Superior Court of Los Angeles County determined that not having a relationship with their father would be harmful to the 6 children. The court said that the kids are safe with their father and that it is critical that each of them have a healthy and strong relationship with both of their parents. And then he also said Maddox, who is now at this time 17, is essentially free to go with either parent because he's older. The former couple was asked to arrange a phone call between them, their children, and 2 psychologists to explain the summer schedule. And Brad had physical custody of the minor children, except for Maddox, for 4 hours a day from June 8th to June 17th, 2018, in London, where Angelina was currently living. So something broke down, and Brad was like, okay, I'm going to go back and get my time. And the judge agreed with him. Said, you need to have way more time than you have now, and the kids aren't in danger with you, and you get daily time with them.
I see this way too often. I think I see it more in dads. They don't want to rock the boat. They think things are going good. So they say, let's just keep doing what we're doing. But if it's been determined that you're no danger to your children, you should be seeing them more than 4 hours a day. And it looks like he pushed back.
Yeah. And I think that's good, because we always say that if we should have both parents that, have continuous frequent contact with both parties. And I'm glad that that judge said that. To kind of speed up a little bit of what's been happening, all of a sudden then that just must have flickered something in her that she did not like, because things just turned nasty. And, in August of 2018, all of a sudden she's accusing him of not paying child support, which that's actually common. We see when we have these long drawn out divorces where there's a hold in the middle, all of a sudden somebody comes back and says, you're not paying me money. I don't really get it, but Brad clapped back and said, whatever, I've given her over $9 million. Not to mention Angelina Jolie's worth over like $150 million. So when you're saying he hasn't been paying me, I'm like, you got your own money, girl.
Oh, yeah. It's not about the money. Some people really need the money. It's not about the money. Something happened here.
So then their custody battle heads to trial. And that's on December 4th. 2018, and retired Judge John Odenkirk was appointed to the case, which is a continuous dispute over custody of their children. They're still working together towards an out-of-court settlement. A source told the outlet Angelina is not seeking sole custody of the kids anymore. She still supports the reconciliation of the children with their father, which her actions don't speak to those words, but that's just what it is. So we think that they have a trial, and we think we're going to have a final resolution, but I couldn't find the final resolution.
No, there was no final resolution. They let them be divorced, so they got what's called a bifurcated divorce here.
Which isn't very normal.
No, and it's very hard to get. Here they had a private judge. I don't know if that's part of how they were able to get this, or it's just that they're celebrities. But that's not normal. I don't tell my clients I can get them bifurcated divorces and still litigate other issues.
So they legally are divorced in 2019 with all of their issues regarding their children and their property to be dealt with at a later time. The reason why courts don't like to do bifurcations is that it stays off the ability for a settlement, because people are like, oh, I'm divorced. There's no hurry for this. And that's exactly why judges don't like to do it. Don't come into my office and ask for a bifurcation. I mean, we can try and waste money and maybe have a hearing, but unless you have some good reason, most likely the judge is going to deny it here in Utah. Yep.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, it kind of seems that's what happened here because we have this trial in December of 2018. They get legally divorced in April of 2019. So I'm assuming that was their trial court findings. And that they didn't resolve it and that they just got legally divorced so they could fight it out more. And then we don't get anything else, any other rulings on this case until June of 2021.
So we think we're going to have a hearing in December, and then we find out, no, there isn't a hearing. Because in June of 2021, we found out that the judge issued a temporary ruling that would allow the former couple to share custody of their kids. So Brad Pitt finally won what he wanted, which is shared custody, and that Jolie was bitterly disappointed. There was also a credible witness that said Angelina's testimony lacked credibility, and the decision was based on extensive testimonies from people who spent time with the kids and by highly respected professionals. Pitt, for his part, was delighted by the judge's ruling, but the insider said Jolie was already planning her next move, and that's found in the last few months that we've been able to find any information about this case. In August, the judge that just issued this ruling, now Jolie is trying to disqualify him as the judge.
Yeah. So he issues this ruling. He gives them joint custody. It sounds like he might have even given them an equal parent time schedule. I'm not sure. I've gotten mixed reports about that in looking into this case, but clearly he got significantly more time. And that's when, and I'm not going to say, unhappy with the decision, she moves to disqualify the judge. So she filed a motion in July of 2021 alleging that the judge failed to disclose a prior business relationship with Brad Pitt. The court documents asked for the decision, she tried to get the judge off the case. She was successful in August of 2021, and then Brad appealed that decision to have it looked at.
Yeah,
by a higher court.
Right. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of weird. And Brad Pitt's attorney writes in a legal document that he believes it's just celebrities using their prowess to basically get special treatment. And we see that a lot too. A lot of people are like, can I change judges? I don't like what he did for me. It's not as easy as you can think. So the fact that she was able to was interesting. I think the judge just was like, I don't want to mess with this anymore. But then we find out in October, they're still fighting over their chateau.
Yes. Which we had heard nothing about since it went up for sale. Maybe 4 years prior?
And Jolie finally sold her share of the $164 million estate to a company. I mean, who can afford that? So it's a big investment group. And then Pitt will remain part of the business that she sold it to. So she was able to get her money out of that. And then the last thing is just in December 2021, we find out that Pitt wants to date again.
Yeah.
I think he's been hurt a little bit.
I think so. He's probably spent, I can't imagine how much money fighting a divorce for 6 years. That's still not over because there's a lot of questions left. So this judge has been disqualified. What does that mean about his ruling?
I don't know. We couldn't hear because the court sealed it and they're not reporting it because Brad Pitt has been very, very good at keeping sealed lips about this. And, good for him. Proud of him for being the bigger person. But, at the end of the day, this is just an interesting fight over divorce that you're just like, it's sad. Those poor kids are going to be teenagers before they get resolution to this. They got two really ticked off parents. Luckily their parents are billionaires basically, so they can afford these attorneys and stuff and live these lives. But it's just like sad.
Oh, and these kids they're aging out. They're turning 18 and aging out, and their parents are still fighting over custody of them. Yeah. I see this in our cases.
Yeah.
And I say to our clients, what are we doing? These people have the money to do it. These kids have the money to get the help they need. but it doesn't mean that some long 6-year divorce, which it's not even over yet, so 6-year divorce plus, isn't going to cause them mental and emotional damage.
Yeah, the kids want finality. They want done. They want to know that they can love both parents and be free of, shame of knowing that they can have a relationship with the other parent. And I think that that's what struggled so much with this case. And, whoever's fault it is, at the end of the day, like, the divorce gets rid of the bad acts that you did as a husband and wife, but it doesn't get rid of your acts as a father or mother. So we need to separate the two, and we need to be able to divorce the person, but allow that, father, mother to still have a relationship with their kids. And, I'm proud of Brad Pitt. I'm proud that he played the bigger person, that he's gone the way he's gone, that he's fighting for his kids. And Brad Pitt, there's lots of women that would love you. So don't give up hope.
I don't think he has to give up hope at all, even at his age.
I think if you're a man wanting to date Angelina, you should think about priorities. She needs probably a little bit more of a recentering and figuring out what she needs to be happy. But yeah, Brad Pitt, you're good.
Yeah, and on the divorce front, I guess to be continued.
Yeah.
Unless all the kids turn 18 and they're still fighting.
I know. See. We'll see. When we get some finality of this, we'll do a follow-up podcast and we'll kind of get some information. So anyways, that was our other information and celebrity podcast. No One Dies from Divorce. Corttany, it was so fun doing this again with you. I love sharing all the salacious details about these famous people that have way too much money. And if you have a celebrity you'd love to hear about their divorce and what's going on, let us know. Email me at Jill or community@jillcoyle.com, and we would love to be able to do that for you. Till next time, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. You can contact me at community@jillcoyle.com. See you next time. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed as legal advice.